This is episode number 63, featuring artist Ned Mueller, one of the great painters of our generation. Welcome to the PleinAir podcast from PleinAir magazine. I'm your host, Eric Rhodes, publisher and founder of PleinAir magazine. In the PleinAir podcast, we dig into the world of outdoor painting, often called plein air painting. For those who don't know, plein air is essentially a French term meaning outdoors or open air. The French say plein, others say plain. It doesn't matter how you say it. It's a huge movement of artists around the world, and this show is about that movement. This podcast is brought to you by my publisher's Invitational Painters Retreat. This June, it's like summer camp for painters, and this is your official invitation. We paint in the Adirondack Mountains of upstate New York in many of the exact same spots. I mean, you're going to stand in the exact same spots where some of the famous Hudson River School painters painted. Waterfalls, rocks, mountains, beautiful scenery. A lot of people don't even know the Adirondacks, and they are stunning. It's about 5 hours north of New York City, about 6 from Boston, about 2 from Burlington, Vermont. Anyway, it's beautiful. It's a week of painting together, no workshops, no stars, just painting with friends. There are oftentimes stars there, but we're all together. Nobody stands out over one another. We roll out of bed, we feed you, we paint all day, we feed you again, and we feed you lunch and dinner. We sit up at night, we paint portraits together, we sit around doing music. We go to 2 different painting locations every day at least. You can go on your own, you can go with a group. We do it all. It's a lot of fun. I think this year's artists, Lauren Sansaric and Eric Koppel, are thinking about coming to do the music this year. And I'll probably have Rick Wilson and a bunch of others. So we sit around and we sing at night. It's a load of fun. It's a nice way to just kind of get away from it all. You don't have to think about anything but play and painting. It's also a great way to develop yourself as an artist, because when you get 2 or 3 paintings a day, we have a couple of artists who are cranking out 5 or 6 a day. You get that many paintings every single day for a solid week, you really ramp up your game very quickly. Anyway, it's loads of fun. You can learn more at publishersinvitational.com. It's my desire to see more people fall in love with plein air painting. You can help by sharing this podcast with your friends on social media or email. I think we're up to about 18,000 listeners per episode, and 158,000 people have listened so far, so that's very cool. So give us a great rating, if you will, on iTunes, or if you think I started to say suck, but I can't say that on the radio, right? So if you think we're bad, you can give us a bad rating, but we appreciate any rating and any feedback you give us. You can send me emails at eric@pleinairmagazine.com. The interview is brought to you also by the Plein Air Convention in Santa Fe this April. 2 hotels sold out. It's going to be a huge group of people, indoor learning every day from some of the top painters, and then outdoor painting together in and around Santa Fe. It's beautiful. About 80 or so top master artists teaching and working with you. So it's a lot of fun. You can learn more at pleinairconvention.com. So let's get right to our interview with Ned Mueller. Well, I'm honored today to have Ned Mueller on the Plein Air podcast. Ned, welcome.
Thanks, Eric. Good to be here.
I was trying to think today how long you and I have known one another, and I think the first time we ever encountered one another was in Colorado. The Plein Air Painters of America had done a workshop there, and I think Ken Oster's was the first one I took, and then I think I took yours. And we were at a stable painting horses.
Yeah, that was great. That was, where was that?
Well,
I can't think of the name of it.
I can't either. It was a camp of some kind in Colorado, and I remember my kids were had just been born, and I took them out there in their triplet stroller to a plein air painting event. I can't believe my wife allowed me to do it. She's a saint.
That's a great story.
And
I remember it. I remember there were about 10 or 12 of us teaching there, and it was wonderful. I remember faintly because I was running around. It was late in the day, and people were leaving, just about everybody was gone, and I saw a couple of you over in the far corner someplace, and so I thought I'd wander over there. I figure anybody that's staying this late has got to be serious about their painting. So I thought, well, I'm going to go over and see what they're up to, and sure enough, there you were.
Well, I still haven't learned to paint, so it's been a long journey.
Well, it's a long journey for all of us, Eric, so don't feel too bad.
So, Ned, we have so many things to talk about. You have just a little accolade for you. You've been such a joy to me and such an inspiration to me, but also to, I think, to tens of thousands of us. You're just one of the great painters of our time, and not only of our generation, but I think you're going to go down in history as one of the great painters of all time. Your work is just inspiring, and I know that because I have a painting that I got from you. I don't remember if I bought it or what the situation was. I think I did. I have a painting.
Yeah, you did.
And I've had that painting in my.
I couldn't get anybody else. I couldn't get anybody else to buy it.
Yeah, I know. That's why.
I'm just joking.
You charged me so much for it. So I remember, that painting now has hung in at least 4 different houses. That's how long we've known each other. And
I would assume it's always over the fireplace.
Yeah, well, we don't have a fireplace that small, so but it is always in the family room or the living room. And as a matter of fact, I was looking at it this morning. And what I think is interesting is I have, as you can imagine, probably like you, I have a lot of paintings around, and some of them wear out. Some of them don't last the test of time, and some of them can hang there forever and never get tired, and you see new things in them every time you look at them. So what's the key to that? How do you make a painting that lasts forever?
Boy, good question, Eric. I don't know. It's everybody sees something different in paintings, and we all paint for different reasons. I guess it goes back to the fundamentals. If a person has some good training, good grasp of value, color, design, all that together, that all adds up, and we kind of wish they would be great, but it doesn't work out that way. But, some of them do, and I think those stand out.
So if I was to visit your studio, you'd have some that you wouldn't show anybody?
Oh, God, yeah. I got a floor full of them, Eric.
They make great fires.
Well, when I first started showing and everything, and I didn't really know what was going on, and all these people I admired, and they were my heroes, and eventually I got to go out and paint with them and talk with them, and it was an eye-opener when I found out that they did clunkers just like everybody else, and that was good to see.
I think to that point, I think there's 2 things that are good to see. First is to know that even the best of the best, like yourself, make mistakes, but also that everybody started with a rocky start. I mean, I don't think I've ever met anybody, maybe one person, who said that they could paint like a rock star out of the box, and they're probably lying.
Yeah, probably so. There are some people that are blessed. There's a few out there. You can think, probably, but most of us, had a struggle, and you had to take classes. I was lucky just because I just went to one of the best art schools.
Which one was
in
that?
The country. It's the Art Center School. It's kind of the Harvard of the art schools, and it's in Los Angeles. And I was lucky. My dad told me, one of the smartest things he told me, he said, Ned, if you're going to go to an art school, try to go the very best one, because that's what you're going to be competing. And I had no confidence in myself, but we went down there, and I could draw well, and we were very poor. So the combination of my drawing skills, and I think my attitude, I got accepted, and and that was a thrill. And then I got a scholarship, and it was hard to get into that school. Great training. The key there was every teacher was a working professional. They all knew the business. And I was an illustration major, and took too many drawing classes as I could. It helped. I loved to draw. They even had me teaching drawing while I was in school, and I'd substitute for some of the great draftsmen that were teaching there. I was way over my head. Didn't handle it well, but but it was a good experience. The other thing is, if you didn't reach a certain standard, they did not let you graduate. And my best friends, or one of my best friends, they kicked him out in the sixth semester. But they kind of did him a favor because he wanted to coach football, anyways. But it was a tough. It was grind. But boy, you were prepared. You learned the fundamentals. You learned them well. We weren't allowed to touch color for 2 years. And I tell my students, the old masters, they worked in black and white for 4 years. Incredible. It was 2 years when I was in art school. Our first color assignment was 3 white eggs on a light blue plate. That was tough, but it really gives you a good grounding, and so I was pretty lucky.
While we're talking about that subject, let's just dig deeply into it for a second, because I think you've stumbled onto something that everybody needs to hear. A lot of people already know this, but it's surprising to me how many don't. I remember I was interviewing an artist on the podcast who had become a relatively successful artist, yet after many, many years, someone had all of a sudden taught her about values. I mean, she was doing it instinctively, but nobody had ever taught her the core principles of values. And so black and white painting or grayscale painting, talk about why that's such an important principle for the artist who might not know.
Well, I guess the best word, it teaches you structure and volume and design. Because that, value, the arrangements of values and shapes, black and white and grays, that's the structure of a painting, and that's what holds a painting together. The old saying is, you probably heard 100 times, values do all the work, color gets all the credit. And as soon as people get into color, the first thing they forget is the values. If you don't get the value right, the color is going to be wrong. So that's why it's so important. But, you teach a workshop and you tell people they're going to do value studies for a week, nobody'd sign up.
Oh, I know.
Because they all, and that's what everybody needs. And I think, and so I encourage, I've actually gave a workshop this last summer that it was strictly value studies, 3 days. And I got it to fill up because I had explained to people why it was important. And once you explain it, then they really get to understand it. But it's really helpful. I still do value studies. I still do little sketches, and it really makes a difference. If I don't do them, or don't at least get an idea, some values down, and if I do it, I should say I have a better chance my painting's going to be more successful.
It's such a temptation to avoid it, and
it's easy. I've done it at times too. I'm in a hurry, but it doesn't take long. You can do a little value sketch, a study. Just at least you got something on paper. You can say I need a dark here, I need a light here. This needs to be bigger, lighter. It's amazing. It's not rocket science. It's easy to do. You can do it in a few minutes, and it can make a big difference. And just a little sidebar here. I'm 77 now, and I've done my share of clunkers, and I want to cut the clunkers down. So what I do now, at least for my studio work, I'll do 20, 25 value studies, and I'll pick the 10 best of those and then do color studies of those. And then the best ones of those, the 5 or so, I'll do maybe larger paintings. The only thing wrong with that is you do a value study, color study, you played the game twice, and it gets doesn't necessarily work out.
Well, that's okay though. I mean, you're learning something from every time you do it, and
yeah, you do.
But they really hold together, and the one thing that I think people want to avoid it because it just seems overly simplified, but it really once you just focus on that, it makes such a huge difference. I had when I first learned to paint, I had been taught to paint with values, and then of course I got completely away with it, and I've just had a lot of problems. And I went and I studied with Joe McGurl, and McGurl, of course, as you know, he paints a value study on the canvas and then he puts color on top of it. And
I used to do that.
Yeah. And it's it's tedious. It takes a lot of time. But once I started doing that, everything started coming together. So I really think you're right about this, and I think it's something we need to encourage more people to really experiment with and try, because it even if you just do it once a quarter or once a month or something, do something where you're kind of reinforcing that. It kind of cements those principles in your head.
Yeah, they don't have to be any larger than 2 or 3 inches or 4 by 6 inches, whatever. But it gets something down.
So when you're on location, do you do a sketch with a pencil, or do you use like a marker? How are you doing your value study?
Yeah. I just got a soft 6 or 8B pencil, and I got a little sketch pad, just a hand I can hold in my hand, and I do a quick little value study. It helps me. It just clarifies things. I can put it down. I can do it in 5 minutes. And I have something down, and it's just a guide. To me, it makes sense, because you're doing something. It even helps you formulate your idea better. Once you start putting stuff down, you get other ideas. Oh, I could add this, or I need to subtract that.
Right.
I'm amazed that more people don't do it. I just don't think they think about it.
Yeah, well, I think it's, painting is fun. You want to get to the painting. So you graduated from Art Center. What happened then?
Right after that, I had to go in the Marine Corps. The draft was in. It was before the Vietnam War. And everybody was trying to get this. In those days, nobody wanted to go in the service. It was pretty much of a waste of time. You went in for 2 to 4 years, whatever, and there wasn't much there. It's not like now they prepare you with more education and stuff. So, and everything was filled up. So I tried to get the Naval Reserve, and the Naval Corpsman had a resentment against college graduates, and he dinged me because I had a little trouble with one eye. I wasn't going to fly or anything. But so I went across and enlisted the Marine Corps. And I went in, and, it was totally different from art school, going from art school into the boot camp Marine Corps. But unfortunately, I came down with pneumonia.
Oh, my.
And I was sick as a dog. They put me in the hospital. There 5 weeks, a couple of guys died next to me. I was in the emergency, I forget what they call it. So I was pretty close, and I ended up having a nervous breakdown. And I got a medical discharge. So it's probably one reason I'm alive today, because it was just before the war started. But so anyways, I didn't get off to a very good start, so I went home and, was literally pretty much, I was a vegetable for a while. And I was really in bad shape. It was quite a shock, and lost all my confidence. I went in a hospital, got out after a couple months, and went to work as a carpenter. Got in the union and got a job and started working, and just getting myself out there, and I was getting back into life, so to speak. And let's see, even while I was doing that, because I still wanted to do something. I was an illustration major, wanted to do some illustration. So in the meantime, I was at least going to drawing. I was going to drawing sessions at least twice a week. Kept me in the ball game. And I was getting my confidence back, and I picked up some freelance work. This was in the Bay Area. And stuff like that. Did storyboards, some advertising, some illustration work, and kept going. And I ended up working at the post office and working at nights, doing illustrations. 2 or 3 jobs to keep going. And I did that for 25 years, and got some pretty good assignments. I did everything. I was a courtroom artist. I did architectural renderings. I did, editorial illustrations, advertising, anything to pay the bills. And then after a while, I just got sick of it. I was going to airbrush, and I didn't know what to do, and I just kind of ran on this Western art show over here in Ellensburg. And I stopped, what is this all about? And I went in there, and it sort of was then like the PleinAir shows are now. There were a lot of Western shows. They'd have them in motels, hotels, or exhibition halls. And it was a great place for artists to get started. I met some other artists and showed them my stuff, and they said, "Oh, wow, you should get involved with this." And a lot of Western art is a lot like illustration, anyways. It's probably closer to illustration than the fine arts for the most part. So I fit right in, and I was, it was just when it was kind of booming, and I was, hit the ground running because I had a lot of good training and was doing some pretty good work, and so I was selling pretty well, and I got invited to some of the major shows, the old NAWA show, which is now the Prix West, the Rendezvous show, and the Artists in America show, and met a lot of great artists and talked to them, and painted with them, and it was a great experience. It was great training for just getting into more. And then in doing the Western art, I wanted to do more. I just didn't, I wasn't a cowboy. I was raised in Montana. People think I'm a cowboy, and it was a little too conservative for me. It was somewhat restrictive. Anyways, that's how I saw it. So I started going to Mexico and Guatemala and travel because I wanted to do more. I wanted to do more than just Western art. So I loved to travel, went to exotic countries, and started doing more things from places like Italy, Guatemala, Mexico, China, India, and all that. So it's kind of evolved to where I am now, so still doing some of that stuff and doing other things. Although I was really going full bore, full bear, 120 miles an hour, traveling around doing workshops and art shows and PleinAir shows. And about 4.5 years ago, my back went out. It was an old football injury, and I had to have back surgery. I was excruciating pain, obviously not making the best decisions. I had back surgery, but unfortunately it went bad.
Oh, no.
Yeah. and left me with nerve damage. So you're left with chronic pain. I've been adjusting to it. I'm actually going to a pain clinic now. And I'm one of the lucky ones. Half the people there got hooked on opioids, because of the pain. I got off those things, as soon as I could. There's just no cure, and you got to learn how to live with this.
Well, that'd be tough. I think I'd have a hard time accepting that. I'd be like trying everything, but I'm sure it's true.
Yeah. I didn't want to accept it either, but I knew that this ain't going to get any better. And I talked to some neurosurgeons and stuff. And the trouble is with the medicals, they'll treat you for back injuries and stuff, and said, but they don't. All these people I was talking, nobody asked me how I felt, my emotions. That I was depressed, I was angry, they're taking my life away.
So obviously, if you're in chronic pain, and which I've experienced briefly, I guess it wasn't chronic if I experienced it briefly, but
what they call it, they explained to me yesterday, there's acute pain and there's chronic pain. Chronic pain, you're going to live with. Acute pain is something that they can do something about. Chronic pain is just you're going to have to live with it. Yeah. For better or for worse. And that's what I've been doing. I've been keeping myself busy. I'm still teaching. I'm still painting. Not as much as I used to. Not doing as many shows, because still adjusting. I got to live with this the rest of my life, and I can either stay in bed and that's the toughest part.
What's the message from this that you'd like everybody to get out of that?
Well, in a way, for me, people like me and artists, we're lucky, because when I'm drawing or painting or teaching, the pain's there, but it's in the background. I'm not thinking it because I'm concentrating on my work or my teaching. So that's where I'm blessed. I have that.
One of my favorite memories is you were at the first PleinAir convention in Las Vegas, which I remember when I started trying to sell that idea to people like you. It's like, you want to do what? This is crazy. And you were on stage with Camille Preswatic in a double presentation, and you were like Ricky and Lucy up there. It was like a comedy team.
Yes. Well, you know the story behind that.
No, I don't.
We were both a little ticked because we were told we were going to be able to have an hour and a half. And I won't mention him, but you had this other guy come in and give this big movie presentation. And we were down to about 40 minutes or so. So we didn't really talk to each other, but I thought, we're just going to go up there and have fun. We're not going to be able to do too much. So I just kind of just thought, well, what the hell? I'm just going to be myself. And so I started teasing Camille, and joking with her and all sorts. But the audience loved it.
They did.
They were going crazy, and one thing led to another, and then so people came up and said, "Oh, we just loved it. Everybody else is so serious, and you guys were having fun." And then the next year I did it, and Steve. And I told Steve, Steve, this time I'd like to maybe talk a little more my philosophy, serious stuff like that. He said, "No, Ned, Camille, do the same thing." And I don't know if you know this, but I bought one of those flatulence machines, a whoopee machine.
A whoopee cushion?
No, it was actually an electronic thing.
Really?
So you could push a button and you could be 30 yards away. And I had it in my pocket, and I put it down near Camille. And the plan was that I told people, said, well, you better tell Camille. And I did. I told her I was going to do that, and she was aghast. Says, well, I can't do this now. And she started thinking, well, okay, let's do it. So, and so I had it all set up, and I don't know what went wrong. But I was going to, like, drop my brush, and then when she bent over, I was going to... and something went wrong, and when I did it, it just went off in my pocket, and everybody thought it was me. So it totally backfired. So
well, you cleared the room.
Something like that, yeah. Anyways, that's the story behind that.
That was a lot of fun. So you do a lot of teaching, and I had the pleasure of studying under you. And I think the thing that I learned very early on is I'm not sure how to articulate this actually, is you got to know something before you learn something. I think when I studied with you, I was so fresh and so new and so inexperienced that I didn't even have any core basics down before I went to the master. So what's your recommendation on that? How do you deal with that kind of a thing?
Well, I just try to get people, like we were talking about value studies. I try to get them to do this because they're overwhelmed. It's just like a boxer. You wouldn't put a beginning boxer in against Mike Tyson. And so that's why people do value studies. They get their confidence or their drawing. The most important thing is drawing, but the problem there is it can take you 10, 20 years to get good with drawing. So it's a long-term thing. And I'm lucky because I loved it. I still go to a drawing session. The other thing is I tell them, about people say, well, I don't want to draw the figure. It's too difficult. And I tell them you don't have to draw the figure to draw well. If you're going to do figures, yeah, maybe. But all drawing is judgment. You're learning how wide a boxcar is to how high, or the general shape and height and width of a fire hydrant or a tree. Even if somebody was doing landscape for 20 years, because they're drawing and they're using their judgment, which good drawing is just good judgment. It turns into good judgment and good taste. They could go back and do a pretty darn good figure just because they've been just drawing or painting and sharpening their eye or their judgment. So I tell them, look at it that way. You don't have to. When I started out, people were telling me, Jaden, that you're more of a complete artist because you do figures, you do animals and landscapes. And I said, yeah, but you don't want to do figures. You're doing great landscapes. So don't worry about doing figures. Doesn't make sense. So I think just there again, keep working, do some value studies, try to master values. That's the easiest thing to learn because everybody can see the amount of light and dark. You get into color, it's a whole another complicated ball game.
Now,
really gets.
I don't recall your palette, but you've got a pretty extensive palette, do you not?
Yeah, I basically have a warm and cool of each color.
So for the people who are listening who might not understand what that means, would you just touch on that? Because I think that's one thing that a lot of people really have a hard time with is warms and cools. So first off, why do you have a warm and cool of each color, and then how do you use them?
Well, okay, so example like yellow. Lemon yellow is a cool yellow. Cadmium yellow, light or medium, is a warm yellow. Now, with the reds, for my warm red, I have a cad red light, and alizarin is the cool. Now, the relationship is because cad red light is warmer than the alizarin, but it's cooler than the yellow. So it's all about relationships. You can within say the grass is kind of a cool green. It's general cool greens, but you're going to have greens in there that are warmer and cooler than the overall tone. So if you can grasp that it's all relative.
So there are people out there who would teach formulas, if you will, and there are others who say there are no formulas. So in terms of use of warms and cools, help these people understand why that's important. What's the benefit of learning to do that?
Basically it just makes the painting more interesting and enriches it and it enlivens it. That's if somebody just say doing tonalistic or, as you said, a formula thing.
Well, some people would say that you always place a cool next to a warm. Is that something you would do?
No, not necessarily.
All right.
Not necessarily. It's there again. It's almost then you're thinking of a formula, because then people are always trying to get warm against cool, and it just doesn't work out that way. I mean, you could paint that way, but I think you'd get pretty repetitive after a while, and every painting is kind of different.
Right.
I mean, we have our habits, we have our prejudices, but within that, there's just different situations. There's ambient light. A good example, people are saying, well, what's flesh color?
Yeah.
Well,
go to the
no
store and buy
thing.
some flesh color paint, right?
Yeah, and it's all relative. The other thing is that might help. There's no such thing as local color. My hand is under a certain light, say under a warm light, is a warm flesh color. Under a cool light, it's a cool flesh color. So, and also, it's whether my hand is against a blue object or a red shirt. It's going to change. So, I mean, you start thinking that way, boy, I mean, it could be anything. It's
You're just judging based on how it feels to you.
There's three stages, I think, that if people are going to understand. There's three stages of kind of learning about painting. The first stage, you paint what you know. The sky is blue, the grass is green. You think all shadows are cool because you go in the shade to get cool. Not so much. Then you paint what you see. That you see sometimes grass is yellow. Sometimes the sky is yellow. Most shadows are warm midday. Most of them are warm and the light is cool. And so you learn to see. You learn to see that and compare that the sky is cobalt blue and sometimes it's more emerald blue, or sometimes it's different. And you can compare it to other blues in the picture. The third stage is the best stage. You paint what you feel. You make the warmth. I just did a demo this morning for my class. The snow scene. You make the lit side of the barn more yellow or orange to get the feeling of that warm light. You make the shadow a little bit cooler to vibrate against that cool light. Because when you have a warm light, you usually have cooler shadows anyway. So you're kind of feeling it and pushing it. You're putting colors where you feel it works for your painting, which can be different for everybody.
So how do you get to that stage? How do you graduate? Is it just a matter of brush time, so much time?
Well, you pray a lot. How do you get to that? Well, you get a lot of mileage.
Yeah.
Just a lot of mileage.
So you've got a brand new baby plein air painter who's coming to you and saying, I want to get good fast. I want to ramp it up as fast as possible. I want to beat the system. I don't want to go through all this nonsense. How do I get there fast? What do you tell them?
Pick up another, take up another thing like
take up race car driving.
Yeah, or like become a brain surgeon. You can go. I've had Supreme Court judges and surgeons and doctors and lawyers take my workshops. I'm sure other people, and they've all said painting is the hardest thing they ever had to do. Yeah. And it probably is.
Yeah, but if we tell people that, they won't try it. So we have to lie to them in the beginning and tell them it's easy, and then once they get hooked, they'll realize that it's not easy, but they're hooked. It's kind of like those opiates.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of that way. I mean, most of us, when we start out, we're just hoping and praying and think we're going to be great someday. But if we probably, it's like a lot of things, if we knew what we were getting into, we may not have got into it.
So one thing I love about you is that, first off, I already told you that I think you're an amazing painter, but I love your portrait work. It feels very Russian to me. I hope that's a compliment to you. It's intended as one, because you're so good at those big, bold, juicy brush strokes and nailing those portraits. It's just beautiful.
Well, I think one of the reasons, I love doing it. I don't do commissions. I do them just because I enjoy them, and it sharpens my painting skills. Now, lately, I've been doing a lot of charcoal portraits just because I enjoy them, and actually able to sell some of my portraits. It's hard to sell drawings, but I've been able to find people who want to buy my portrait because I approach it not as I try to treat it as a work of art. I like different value changes. I use 2 lights, so I get more, a variety of lights and darks and different shapes, and so that's what excites me. I could probably make a ton of money doing portraits, but I think it would take the joy away. And I love these so much, and I think that's why they come out better. And I'm also doing that with my painting. I'm just painting more for myself and doing what I feel and what I want to do, and not worrying about whether it's going to sell or not. And I'm doing better painting. That's nothing surprising to people. The old saying is the biggest problem we have is getting out of our own way.
Yeah.
And I'm able to just enjoy those, and my work is better because of it.
So what is the standard which you measure yourself against? And I know that's tough, but who is it that you aspire not to copy, not to be, but to be in the same league as? And
oh God, there's hundreds out there, Eric. And I know, like you mentioned before, I've always been a fan of the Russians.
Yeah.
There's I don't know, it's because of their history of suffering or what, but they just do incredible stuff. The guy that's always been my hero, kind of the top of the list, is Fetchin.
Yeah.
How can you beat a guy like that? Or a lot of people don't know a guy by the name of Arkhipov. You've been to Russia, you've probably seen some of these people, but there's a lot of great contemporary stuff done. That's why I want to try to do a few different things, because there's some really nice contemporary stuff being done that is it's not just pure traditional. It's just a mixture of contemporary and traditional. I guess also because I've been along so around so much and seen so much, you have a tendency to look for something different, and there's some really incredible stuff being done out there.
Sure is.
It's impressive.
So what have you not done? What's your bucket list? What have you not done yet as a painter that you really want to do?
Oh gosh, I think kind of what I'm just talking about. I want to try to come up with something a little different. And I'm trying to think of ways I can I was thinking, how can I do this? How can you teach an old dog new tricks? I could trying to fool myself. I'm going to maybe keep treating this like it's more of a hobby or something, and something, something that'll free me up to just, try and do different things and try to get out of the same old thing. That's my idea, but I got age working against me. I'm gonna try. I don't know. I'm doing a little bit, but it's.
I think I need to take you to Russia with me. I was over there. I took the art cruise people to St. Petersburg and Moscow, which are great to see. But then I went inland with Nikolai Dubovik and some other artists, and we just kind of painted at the Academic Dasha, which is where, Repin and all those guys hung out all summer. And I was exposed to some incredible artists who were there. There are 22 studios there on the property, and there's a guy named I want to say Cherepov, but I think that's wrong. Anyway, he was about 90, and he had 25 canvases that were about 10, 12 feet long. He had them all stretched and ready to go. And he said, I have to get these done for a show in March. I thought, well, this guy's got energy if he's going to do 25 10-foot canvases, 10-foot high, 10-foot long, 12-foot long. And these guys they amaze me. I think the training, it certainly is the culture, but the training is the key to everything. If you look at Feshen's training, his training was just spectacular. And these people are still getting so beautifully trained. The guy I painted with is one of the people who trains the artists today. So it's, he whipped out a portrait of me. I set up and did a painting. It took me about 2 hours. He came over about 15 minutes before I was done and whipped out a portrait of me that was as good as anything that I'd ever seen. And
wow.
He did it in 15 minutes.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. The thing is, if you do anything enough, I've done thousands and thousands of drawings and life drawings and thousands of portraits. So I could get a likeness in my sleep. I mean, it's not people say, well, geez, you're a genius. You go, no, I've just done a lot of them. Yeah. If you do enough of anything, you're going to get good.
Don't you think that drawing from life and painting from life and doing portraits makes you a better plein air painter?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It all adds up. The plein air work, the studio work, whatever it just all makes you a better artist, no matter what you're doing.
Leave the painters out there who are kind of on their journey at different stages. You've already talked about values. You've already talked about color. Leave us with something that we can focus on that might be helpful in our journey.
Yeah. Try to trust your instincts, and what you love and what you want to do, whatever it is. And I'm not like doing anything really far out or anything, but I think if artists can do that, the thing of kind of having your own voice, no matter what it is, whether you want to paint tractors or landscapes or what, if you love it, it's going to show in your work. And you would think it would be easy to do that, but there's so much going on out there, and we see somebody doing this, and you say, oh, I want to do this, but it may not be for us, They say, oh, God, that's so beautiful. But, this is, I wish I would have known this when I was younger. Because I was running around seeing somebody do something or go in a direction, I thought, well, that's what I got to do, or something. And that was the wrong thing. It's nice to see this stuff, but be careful that just because somebody else is doing it doesn't mean it's good for us.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right. Well, Ned, thank you so much. This has been very enlightening and a pleasure. I think we could talk for hours.
Yeah, well, thanks, Eric. You do a great interview.
It's all those days in radio.
Yeah, well, and keeping and doing it, you're a good soul, and what you're doing just for art in general is really impressive. Really proud of you. You should be proud of yourself. It's so great what you're doing for so many people. I hope they appreciate you.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. I humbly thank you.
Well, it's true.
Well, thanks again to Ned Mueller. What a fascinating guy. What a great painter. Very generous guy. I spent a lot of time with Ned when I first started painting. I still have one of the paintings that he did while I was with him hanging in my living room. So I'm very proud to know Ned. Today's podcast is sponsored by the Plein Air Convention in Santa Fe. Learn more at pleinairconvention.com. And also by the Publishers Invitational Painters Retreat, my retreat for painters in June in upstate New York in the mountains, Adirondacks. Beautiful. Go to publishersinvitational.com. Well, the Plein Air movement continues to be red hot, which is why Plein Air Magazine is the top, believe it or not, I'm so honored by this, the top representational art magazine sold nationwide at Barnes & Noble. So drop by, pick one up, or you can get a subscription at pleinairmagazine.com. This is always fun. Let's do it again sometime like next week. We'll see you then. My name is Eric Rhodes. I'm the publisher and founder of Plein Air Magazine. Remember, it's a big world out there. Go paint it. Bye.